Okay, so I am delighted to welcome Stephanie Thompson, who is presenting today in this webinar. Oh, Stephanie is actually director of the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network, and she will share her work and experience with the network's registry. What are they doing to help expecting parents whose child is diagnosed with Down syndrome? What are they doing to help parents make decisions to plan for adoption or in the process of adoption? And she will share a lot more about what the network is doing in this with us today. So Stephanie, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello. And then how do I?
So I'll just stop sharing and just go ahead and share your screen.
Let's see. Share screen. Hey, there we are. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, should be able to see that. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Stephanie Thompson. I am the director of the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network. And kind of what Vilma was saying, today's talk is just an introduction to the NDSAN, and I'm going to give an overview of who we are and who we serve. So thank you again for joining me, and let's get started. And okay, it's just telling me you all can see my application, which is great. So the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network was created in 1982 as a program under the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati, and it's in Cincinnati, Ohio. And to this day, the NDSAN is still a program of the DSAGC, even though we serve new and expectant families and birth and adoptive families in all 50 states. So we are also proud to say that we are the only adoption program whose sole focus is children with Down syndrome in the US. So the reason I am here today is to, the reason that we do what we do, and let's see, trying to see if I can make that a little smaller. See, hey, there we go. is to honor the mission of the NDSAN, which is to ensure that every child with Down syndrome has the opportunity to grow up in a loving family. And that includes the biological family, if they decide to parent after counseling with us, and it includes the adoptive family, if the biological family decides to make an adoption plan. So before accepting the role of director of the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network, I worked in many other roles within the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati. So with the bulk of my time spent as the Early Matters Coordinator, where I provided birth parent support to families whose child received a diagnosis of Down syndrome. And so I made many hospital visits to families and providing information and resources. And my experience comes from my son here, my biological son here, Christopher, who's 29, who's hanging out in his room right now. And so I am able to put myself in the shoes of all the expectant parents and the new families who contact us, because I still vividly remember getting that diagnosis or having Chris get that diagnosis of Down syndrome. The services that we provide, the NDSAN. So the NDSAN has an expectant and new parent line, which is basically my cell phone. So they can call and text any time of the day or night. So I'm always on call. We have a registry, which is a database of families who are ready and approved to adopt a child with Down syndrome, which I will expound upon later in the talk, and support to adoptive families. They can email, text, message us through social media, or go the old-fashioned route and give us a call with any questions that they have about our program or the adoption process. Outreach to medical professionals in the form of a booklet that we created, which I will show you all shortly. Outreach, information that is available via our website to everyone. So, website, Facebook, Instagram. We provide information to new and expectant parents, adoptive families, medical professionals, parent groups. Anyone who contacts us, we're going to help out. So let's talk about how we support new and expectant parents. So when an expectant or a new parent calls, contacts the NDSAN, they may get our information from a genetic counselor, a hospital social worker, or a pregnancy counselor. And a referral might come from an agency. So I'm not speaking to them directly. I'm talking with the agency. And the agency will call on their behalf. But the majority of the contact comes directly from expectant or new parents who Google the term or Google the phrase Down syndrome adoption. That's the large majority. So thank you to Google for that. And so often that initial contact is an opportunity to provide grief counseling. So we do not want a new parent or expectant parent to make a lifelong decision during the grief process. So we kind of sit with them in grief and we provide that grief counseling and we support them during that time. And then after grief counseling, we provide accurate and up-to-date information on Down syndrome. We will give them a link to their local Down syndrome parent group. That's extremely important and it's just, we'll give them a link to the website because they don't want to contact anyone at that time. So we want them to take a look at the information and support that they can get locally. And then after we educate them on Down syndrome, I then put my parent hat on and we talk about parenting a child with Down syndrome. And I just noticed that talking with me, it makes such a difference in the way that an expectant or new family perceives their child. So talking with me parent to parent. So we talk about the reality of parenting a child with Down syndrome. And we talk about the joys, we talk about the challenges. I will answer any questions that they will have and how this possible new journey will affect their lives and the lives of their present children and what the future may look like and where the supports might come from if they choose to parent. So after we counsel these families, after I do that parenting counseling, about half of the families decide to parent. So I do make sure that I connect them personally with their local Down syndrome support group. And then you've got almost half decide to make an adoption plan. So this is, they appreciate the information, but they just feel like they cannot raise a child with special needs. So we are going to talk about next, how do we support adoptive families? So for families interested in adopting a child with Down syndrome, really, we made a webinar. It's about an hour long. So you can take a deep dive and learn everything that you need to know by going to our website. So I kind of go, if you go to ndsan.org and hover over the adoption process, and if you click that adoption process and cost button, it's going to take you to the first step, which is our webinar, and it's about an hour long. And the adoption process and cost page also has steps under that for families interested in adoption. But it does start with our 1 hour webinar. And, for the purpose of this webinar, though, we're going to just do a general overview. So, because that resource is there on our site of what a family needs to do to join the NDSAN registry. So let's see. And so here's how we support adoptive families. So the first and most important step is to educate yourself on what Down syndrome is. So, and I'm talking everything about Down syndrome. If you want to parent a child with Down syndrome, you need to know everything about Down syndrome. There are 2 national Down syndrome groups where you can find loads of information on different topics. If you go to Google and you type in National Down syndrome, just type in the phrase National Down syndrome, it's going to come up with National Down Syndrome Society and National Down Syndrome Congress. Those sites have the most accurate, updated information on Down syndrome, and information is listed by topic. So just start at the home page and just roll through all the pages of both of those sites. They have webinars, they have fact sheets. That's the best way to get yourself educated. The second step would be to connect with your local Down syndrome parent group. So I have a link on our adoption process and cost page that will connect you to the Global Down Syndrome Foundation. And they created a list of support groups by state. It's just so important to join the parent group. Now, when you know that this is what you want to do, join the group immediately so that you can learn what resources are in your area for children and adults with Down syndrome, and your parent group is a great place to get hands-on experience, because a lot of birth families want an adoptive family to, of course, be educated in Down syndrome and all of the issues related to it, but also have hands-on experience. So sign up for your local group's newsletter, follow their social media pages, go to any meetings or workshops, programs that they're hosting, volunteer at their events. There's no better way to get educated and to get experience than through your local Down syndrome parent group. And so next is determine the home study for you. And so to back up a bit, for those families who are new to the process of adoption, the process involves similar steps in every state. You will need to identify an agency who will complete a document called a home study. And a home study is required for an adoption. But let's talk about that home study first. So a home study is a really large, detailed, in-depth written assessment of your family. It is created by an adoption agency worker or a person licensed to create a home study. And the home study process can take approximately 3 months because of information that's gathered and training needed. And that information is an in-depth history of you, your spouse, anyone else living in your home, your extended family, your marriage, your domestic partnership, if applicable, your employment, your financial situation, and more. It's like everything. So you will need to get fingerprinted and background checked, as well as get medical assessments of each family member. So since I'm giving you a very condensed version of this process, I would love for you to, again, if you watch our webinar, you're going to get way more specific details in that. So, but I will tell you that there are 2 types of home studies that you can choose from. So, and that will help you determine which home study would be best for you. And it'll help you identify an agency to do your home study. So if you want to adopt an infant with Down syndrome, you will want to get a private adoption home study. If you cannot pay placement fees or adoption fees, you will want to get a public adoption home study. If you are over the age of 40 and you want to adopt an older child, you will want to get a public adoption home study. And again, this is the most condensed version of the home study, of what a home study is. So, feel free to reach out to me and make sure you just watch the webinar. Because I could go on for like an hour about home studies. So the next step is, as soon as you know that you will be approved for a home study, you will need to create a family profile. And a family profile is a visual story that you will create for the new and expectant parent, where you introduce yourself and your family. And you will talk about yourself, your education, your employment, your hobbies, your interests. You will talk about how you met your significant other, how long you've been together. If you're in a partnership with someone, you'll highlight each of your children, your extended family, your home and neighborhood. You'll talk about all the educational and medical services in your area. It is mandatory that you talk about why you want to adopt a child with Down syndrome and what experience you have with Down syndrome. Those are the 2 most important things to new and expectant parents when reviewing a profile. Then the last step is, when your home study is complete, and you are immediately available to adopt, you will email me and say, hey, Steph, my home study is complete and I'm immediately available to adopt. And I will respond back I will email you with a consent form that you will fill out, sign, and email to your home study worker. And you must CC me on that email, and because I need to have a copy of that consent form. And then as soon as I get your consent form, I will then send an email to you and your worker with another form that this time needs to be filled out by your worker. So your worker will send that back to me with the filled out form that I sent her with your home study, And your home study must come directly from your worker. And so when I receive your home study, I will follow up with emailing you our registration form. So yay, so that's how the process works to get on our registry. The registration form is not online at this time. I'm still doing it the old-fashioned way by having you attach it to an email and send it to me via email. And it can only be sent, the registration form can only be sent after I get a home study directly from the worker. So the registration form is a 3-page form that you will give me very specific details about your family that I will keep confidential unless I need to share pieces of it, and I'll ask your permission beforehand. And I'll ask for your birth date, your employment, education, how many children you have, their ages, their ethnicities, disabilities. Tell me about your experience with Down syndrome, why you want to adopt a child with Down syndrome. And I will ask how much and what type of communication that you are willing to have with the birth family. It's called an open adoption statement. And after I enter your information into our registry, I will send you an email of congratulations, you're on our registry. Then I will request your family profile. And so as soon as I receive your family profile, you will be considered immediately available and in our registry, and then considered for situations within the NDSAN. So that's that in a nutshell. And again, condensed version. So back to when an expectant or new family decides to move forward with an adoption plan. But let me go back to this. No, join the registry. And then, okay, let's just sit on this page. So back to when an expectant or new family decides to move forward with an adoption plan, most of the time, they will tell us in specific detail what they're looking for in a potential family. So they can be as specific as they want. And we want them to feel an overwhelming sense of comfort and a sense of peace as they walk this journey. So then they tell me about their child in specific detail, gender, age, medical issues, ethnicity. And then what I will do is I will create a query in the NDSAN registry using both parameters, so the adoptive family parameters and the child parameters. And I will put those parameters in the registry, and the registry will kick out a report of potential families for that specific situation. So I will contact the potential adoptive families who come up on that report. I will share extremely confidential information about the potential situation, and then you will let me know if you're interested in the situation or not. So if you feel that the situation that I'm contacting you about may or may not be a good fit for your family at this time, it's okay to say no. So families think that they'll be removed if they say no and not at all. We want, we want to know, or best, the situation that would fit your family. So I appreciate you considering what would be best for everyone. So the families who say yes to being considered, I will send your home study and your family profile to the adoption agency. And again, they will review your home study. The adoption agency will, let me go back, this is more. So the agency will review your home study to make sure it's in compliance with their state mandates. And then they will show your family profile to the birth or expectant family. And the birth or expectant family will choose an adoptive family. Then you will start a relationship with the adoption agency and then the family, of course. And then my core work is done, but I am always in the background for both the birth and expectant family and the adoptive family if there's any questions or support. And so that's kind of the process, how it works in a very small nutshell, like this big of a nutshell. So I'm just giving you the condensed version. And to remain on our registry, you must always have an updated home study, and you must always be immediately available to adopt. And in most states, you have to update your home study yearly. So, and one thing I want to mention, and it's very, very important, we are not a waiting list. That has been around for years. That's a myth out in the universe that, hey, you're a waiting list. It's been misinterpreted by expectant or new parents when they hear that. When they hear that we have a waiting list, they think that means that they have to wait to place their baby. So they do not contact us. And sometimes that, because of that, it resulted in termination of the pregnancy. So we like to say, and it also misinterpreted by adoptive families who think they have to wait in line. But now I just told you how the registry works. I filter it to what the potential, what the expectant birth families are looking for in a family. So it gets filtered, but not at all true. So our webinar will explain both of those things in detail, but so how I say it is we have a family, or we have a registry of families who are home study ready to adopt a child with Down syndrome. So that's how we kind of explain that. Here we go, medical professionals. So let's take a look at how we support medical professionals. The NDSAN has created a booklet, here's the picture, for medical professionals to give to expectant parents at the time of a prenatal diagnosis. So if a doctor is going to give the option of termination, it is the right of the expectant family to be fully informed of all of their options. So because we are a pro-information program, and so adoption needs to be an option as well. And so our booklet, A Loving Choice, Adoption as an Option, provides support and information to the expectant parent. And in the booklet, we talk about what Down syndrome is, what it may look like to parent a child with Down syndrome, and what it may look like to make an adoption plan. And again, these booklets are for prenatal diagnosis only. About 90% of our calls are from expectant families. And our goal is to have them in the medical outreach packets of the local Down syndrome support groups, because the Down syndrome support groups make medical outreach packets for medical professionals. So if you're on this call and you belong to a Down syndrome parent support group, ask them if they provide medical outreach packets to the doctor's offices or genetic counselors. And if so, see if they have our booklet. If they do not, I will send booklets to anyone. They're free of charge. And we also have a Spanish version of our booklet available. So, and last, but certainly not least, how we support our children in foster care. So we do have a foster kiddos page on our website. If you go to home, at the home piece, adoption process, children in foster care. And so you'll see that there from the drop-down menu. But the process starts with our outreach coordinator, Molly Blaker, who searches national photo galleries, such as Adopt US Kids. And I think a lot of states have what's called heart galleries, and she searches for children with Down syndrome. And if she sees a child, she will contact their worker. She will introduce herself and explain to the worker how the NDSAN can help the child. And once we get permission from the worker to help advocate for the child, we will create a page just for them on our children in foster care page, just like here with little Lucy. And so we will advocate for the child until they are matched with a family, because that is our goal with foster kiddos. So we do not post about private adoption situations. Those are kept confidential and they're only shared with families on our registry. So it was just a quick rundown of that, but that is extremely important, that work that we do with the foster kiddos. So if you ever want additional information on the NDSAN, check out these links. So we have a YouTube channel. YouTube says if you have 100 followers, you can add so I was able to add a /NDSAN. Finally, we got like 100 followers. So if you go to there, you'll see our webinar. So you'll see our hour-long webinar. Then you'll see we have like a Q&A or FAQs web video. And of course, go to ndsan.org, hit the adopt button on the top right. It's going to take you to some help you figure out the adoption process. Of course, join our Facebook page, follow that. Got some great information on there. And then we have my email. So please jot that down. Email me anytime. And I'm extremely busy and it will take me a few days, but I promise you, I respond to everybody, I promise. So that's, if you want more information on us, that's how you can reach us. And look at that, 4 minutes to spare. So if anybody has any questions, but before we do that, just thank you so much for joining me. And I really, really appreciate it. And I will try to open the chat because I do see we have 2 questions in the chat. Can I open those, Vilma? Is that okay?
Yes, go for it. And please, anyone who has a question, just unmute and ask.
Yes. And Katie, I will, oh yeah, you now have my email.
Yes.
So email me and do me a favor, let me know how many packets you provide and I will send you booklets. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious how many adoptions you match each year.
So we have about, we do about 25, we help with 25 placements a year. We get about 80 calls a year. And this is where it gets a little bit muddy. We get about 80 calls from expectant or new parents a year. Close to half decide to parent, okay? Then we have 25, I just told you 25 placements. Well, then we've got that space of unknown. We're like, well, where's the rest of this equation here? Because what I do is on January 1st, I do all of my stats, and those unknown, that missing space there, those are families that I'm still counseling. So on January 1st, you know, I have 80 calls, 25 decided to place. I'm still counseling a good chunk. And then there's the parents that decided to parent. So, but usually that's how it is after, but it's because we provide that grief counseling. Because I tell them, listen, we're not going to talk about adoption right now. You're grieving. So you're in that flight or fight mode. So I'm just going to sit with you in grief. And then, you know, as we progress, then we do it Down syndrome education, like I said, then the counseling, Down syndrome parent counseling, but I try to always include the parent groups as I go along.
I love that. Thank you. My son, 7, and we, you know, got that prenatal diagnosis, and we're terrified. Adoption popped in our minds, but we're so glad we didn't do it. Yeah. Joy, but yeah. I understand.
And you know what? It's okay. So I tell parents that it's okay when you get that diagnosis. Really, honestly, it's trauma. So what do people in trauma? They do 2 things: they run or they fight it. So it's a completely human, normal response. And so that's why we provide that grief counseling, because then they go, oh, okay, I've talked to you, I've gone through that. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine not being her parent. So yes.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thanks.
Well,
All right.
If
Well,
there are no more questions, thank you, Stephanie, so much for sharing a little bit about your work and the resources and what you guys do. And if anyone has questions, they can reach you, they can reach me, and I'll connect them to you. And thanks again for being here.
yes, thank you. All right. Good seeing everybody.